Okay, I'm back. It's the last time you'll see my pretty face today. You know, someone said once, when all is said and done, more is usually said than is done. And so I'm going to say a couple things about KBR. We sponsored the event, so you got to listen, so enjoy. You saw my colleague Mike Rigo earlier, and he showed a short video from National Security Solutions, part of our business. And that highlighted some of the capabilities that KBR provides through our national security line of work. But I'll tell you, if you ask someone, what does KBR do? Invariably, I typically see two answers. One is chow halls, which is true. I mean, look at my belly. We do pretty good chow halls. The other of recent is military moves. Is one of the common answers I get. I don't know if you know, we won the contract a year ago to do all the permanent change of station moves for the DoD. And someone who has done that 17 times in 26 years, I can tell you there's only one way we can go on this, and it's up. But it's really cool. We've done a lot of great work that the DoD liked, including, for the first time, creating an app for a military member's phone where they can securely track, you know, where the movers are, where their goods are, when they're being delivered, any issues along the way. And so it's really been helpful. But, you know, aside from those two things, I'm more concerned about defense and intelligence work. And you heard General Purdy earlier today saying he was really impressed with something he saw called Machina. Last week, M-A-C-H-I-N-A. Guess what? That was originally a KBR thing. It's grown to a bigger group of folks now, but again, that's a KBR thing that was started by us. So we're into a lot of things, and we're really proud of what we're doing for the work for intelligence and space. Okay, break. This afternoon is kind of special. Again, thanks to those of you who have toughed it out and stayed. It's special for a special leader that we're going to recognize, a legend really, General Lyles. In just a minute, when I shut up, General Mike Hamill is going to take the baton and really lead you through the honor of recognizing the lifetime achievements of General Lyles, the best we can do for 50 plus years, 56, I guess. Quick personal story, he won't remember this. Back in 2003, I was aide-de-camp to General Lance Lord. And at the time, General Lyles was a 4-star, and he was the AFMC commander. And so these 4-stars in the Air Force get together a few times a year at events called Corona. And this was Corona Top, and I was a brand new aide. And at these Corona events, they give an award out to the aide who had the biggest screw-up over the previous year. They call it the Heisman. And I was nominated because I forgot to bring the boss's flag for the heraldry dinner at Corona Top. Now, I recovered, and I got it there in time. I solicited the help of then 1-star Susan Helms, who brought me the flag when she flew out. But during the award ceremony, I believe your aide was nominated by you, and thank goodness General Lyles voted for his own aide, so I never got that award. So thank you for that, sir. I appreciate that very much. But there's going to be a great afternoon here. General Hamill's going to tee up some of his personal testimony about General Lyles. You're going to see some videos from quite a few folks, some of whom you're going to be sure to recognize, and they'll relay some personal stories. And then there's going to be an award ceremony. A short speech, short, sir, by General Lyles, and then we'll wrap it up with a fireside chat, which ought to be great. So this is going to be a fun thing, and I appreciate you sticking around for it. Without further delay, then, a man who really needs no formal introduction. All of you know who General Hamill is, but our Master of Ceremonies, Lieutenant General Retired Mike Hamill. Sir.
Well, good afternoon to everybody. Glad to see a lot of hardy souls out there that decided to brave the weather and to be here to join us as we honor General Les Lyles. We're going to be recognizing and honoring General Lyles for his lifelong contributions to national security space, as well as to civil space, industry, U.S. government, and more broadly into the public's service. I'm really pleased and honored to be asked here to actually help recount some of General Lyles' career and to tee up some recorded testimonials that we have from people that you know well. I'm hoping that you don't know too much about who's going to be here, but that would ruin the spontaneity of it all. But overall, as we recount this, and as we do the quick math, General Lyles absolutely qualifies for a lifelong service recognition here because by my math, it's 56 years this year that he was served from his being commissioned as a young lieutenant in the United States Air Force to today and beyond. And we want to make sure that I'll say a few more things about me a little bit later on in the family. I know that with the weather here, everything's been a little bit disrupted. I do want to, though, make a couple comments here to really extend both recognition and appreciation to Steve, Joe, and the entire NSSA team for your continuing support to national security space community. You're 5 years young, I believe, and you've been doing remarkable things, and I think this conference is an example of that. But there's also a lot of critical analysis, studies, and writings that are being performed in the Mormon Center. Yesterday, there was support for young space professionals to help prepare them for the roles that they will have in their careers, and recognizing individuals for their contributions. NSSA is making a big difference. I think the next thing I want to do is to just highlight a little bit the importance, certainly from my perspective and hopefully others, of the importance and the real honor that the Aldridge Award represents. It is intended to recognize distinguished individuals for their special lifelong contributions to national security space enterprise. And it's by no accident this was named after the Honorable Edward Pete Aldridge, whose storied career has stretched across decades of senior government as well as industry positions in the main in working in the national security space arena. In particular, for those of us that were around back at that time, in the 1980s, he was simultaneously for nearly a decade the Undersecretary of the Air Force, then the Secretary of the Air Force, and also the Director of the National Reconnaissance Office for nearly a decade. Some would argue that that was perhaps the high water mark of what we collectively have done in the national security space community. And then he capped it off with being the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition Technology and Logistics. So it is true that Pete Aldridge is one of the great giants, and he has set the standard for what it means to be a lifelong contributor and to have achievements that span over half a century. Today I'm going to briefly recount some of General Lyles' career assignments, activities, contributions, and then we'll hear a little bit about some recorded tributes that have been put together by a number of friends and colleagues from across your career, sir. And then after that, you and I guess, are going to have a little bit of a conversation. And we haven't really rehearsed much of this and the rest of that, so we'll keep it a little light and give General Lyles an opportunity to say some things that maybe he's been waiting all these decades to be able to say. Now, most people know General Lyles from a variety of different times and periods and events throughout his overall career. I was recounting that I think the first time I met General Lyles was back in the late 1980s. And so by my arithmetic then, we've known each other, and I've had the great pleasure to study at his knee as well as get his counsel for over 35 years. So I would like to ask if people throughout this audience that span this whole community and the rest of that, who all has actually personally known, had mentorship in all forms, as well as benefited from the advice and the support that he has known? Out there? Okay, over 50% of the people in the room, General Lyles, so I think that speaks for itself, if you will. What I would like to say is that I'm going to try to highlight a few of his roles. And the real point here is to say that this has been going on for a long time. And although he's had a very, very diverse career in many different places, that he has continued to come back to the space community. That's where his roots were. That's where he served multiple times throughout his career, sometimes in jobs that didn't even have the title involving space. And has most recently served in a very important role at the National Space Council. So it's a real pleasure to maybe recount a little bit about how we got to where he has been and the impact that he's had throughout that time period. So the story starts, at least for us, General Lyles graduates from Howard University, goes on to get a master's degree after his engineering degree in physics and nuclear matters in the late 1960s. He was then commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Air Force and assigned to the Space and Missile Systems Organization in Los Angeles in 1969 to work on the Air Force's launch vehicles. Now, let's just think about that. 1969, 70, 71, this was the height of the Apollo campaign. This was also the time where we had, until very recently, the highest number of space launches in our military and national security world. And General Lyles was there getting sort of a baptism by fire, if you will, through that very first assignment. From there, he went on to learn the air-breathing part of this with the jet propulsion program at Wright-Patterson. And from there, very early in his career, he got sent up to the Pentagon to work in the Deputy Chief of Staff for Research and Development. And for 3 years, he was working for the man himself, General Al Slay. And subsequently, he made the mistake of doing too good a job there. And so when General Slay got his 4th star, he drugged General Lyles over to Air Force Systems Command. So as the phrase goes, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. He certainly proved to the world that he was able to operate under pressure, and it became clear that he had a very, very bright career in front of him. He was a rising star. As he was approaching his mid-career, he was off to a lot of military education programs, but then returning to Wright-Patterson to work in then what was the absolute flagship fighter program in the Air Force, and that was the F-16 Fighting Falcon. And he was responsible for all the avionics systems in that aircraft, and that was a place where people that were mover and shakers and were going someplace, that's where they all congregated. But we did manage in the middle of the 1980s to kind of drag him back into the space side of the business. And this is a very, very tumultuous time. He went back to Los Angeles, first as a deputy and then to head up the Air Force's launch vehicle programs there. And again, if you kind of think about the calendar and the years, this was in the latter part of the, mid to latter part of the 80s. It was in the aftermath of the loss of Challenger. It was in the period that we were trying to rebuild our entire expendable launch vehicle capacity in the nation. And he indeed was responsible for the restoration of the mighty Titan, the Atlas, and the Delta launch vehicles that brought us back to having assured access to space in from the 1980s and beyond. So it was quite a remarkable feat in time that he led. Then back to Systems Command. Again, there's this kind of this arm that always reaches out and pulls you and claws you on back. But then he was at a senior officer level in the requirements business. And once again, I had a chance to interact with him because that was also a point in time where we were completely shuffling up how we were organized for space in the Air Force, and what were many of the capabilities that had been part of Systems Command's responsibilities were getting transferred to Air Force Space Command and the like. And again, I'll remark a little bit later the role that General Lyles played in some of those realignments back at that time period. He was promoted to Brigadier General, and shortly thereafter went on to Ogden to the Air Logistics Center to learn more about the logistics and sustainment side of the business. But this was also the aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union and all of the downsizing that were going on. And he got to experience the pleasure of first rounds of BRAC and closures of depots and the rest of that, and how do you inherit new things. So again, tough job that required a lot of skill and maturity. But his reward for all that was he got to come back to the Space and Missile Center back in Los Angeles, then as the commander and as a 3-star. But as I mentioned to you, this was in the aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. And so we were in big time budgetary reductions. There was one of the terms that came out during his tenure, not of his making, but he inherited it, and that was we're going to go off on an acquisition reform agenda. And all manner of things we talked ourselves into doing. And then likewise, he was involved in accelerating space military capabilities in the aftermath of the first Gulf War and all the tremendous demand that was coming from the operational community. All that was happening simultaneously in the mid-1990s. And he was, even back then as I remember it, he was the calm voice of experience and reason throughout all these tumultuous changes, and people listened carefully to what he had to say. He wasn't simply known within the Air Force, but rather at this point in time, it became clear that he was the right man for the Air Force to nominate to become the director of the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization. And all of his training to that point in time and experience was very necessary because we were pivoting as a nation to missile defense because of the growing threat of theater missiles around the globe. As a result of his service there, the Air Force, and you'll hear a little bit more from one of our presenters, video presenters, the Air Force decided that they needed him back and that the right position for him was become the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, the #2 uniformed officer in the entire Air Force. Did very well there, obviously, during this time, but then on to second fourth-star assignment, and that was as a commander of Air Force Material Command, unequivocally the right guy at the right time. This was in 2000, and this was also the time, if you recollect, not too long before 9/11. And so he was in the saddle at the time of 9/11 and all the rapid response that we had to do for all of our weapon systems, all of our sustainment, to be able to support Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. One other thing I'd say is at this point in time, just as another additional duty, he was the lead person as we in the Air Force implemented all the recommendations from then Secretary of Defense Don Rumsfeld for the organization and management of space. And once again, trying to do the right thing at every turn of the road, General Lyles saluted smartly, and we proceeded with a whole lot of very challenging implementation steps during that time period. Ultimately, he retired from the Air Force in 2003, and I don't know, maybe you got a weekend or something off the job. But the fact is that he went on then to what I think as consensus, probably the most active post-military career of just about any four-star any of us knows, and he's been continuing to do it to this day. His responsibilities and career in his second, third, fourth career have included board and executive management roles in the private sector, participation and leadership in many national level advisory boards. His leadership and wisdom have been felt in organizations as diverse as the board and chair of both USAA as well as KBR, service with the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. He's been a many-year member of NASA's Advisory Council and been the chair of arguably one of the most prestigious advisory board, the Defense Science Board. And at the national level, he was called upon to serve on the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, and then most recently as the chair of the National Space Council's User Advisory Group. Just a stunning series of very high level, very demanding, and very important advisory positions. The pace and diversity of his work, service, and national impact have been breathtaking. Some would say exhausting. I've sometimes reflected that I think the good Lord gave General Lyles 36 hours in his day because there's no way people could be doing this with 24 hours a day, the things and the pace that he has kept up over all this. His achievements and contributions to the DoD and all the space sectors across the U.S. government have been singularly distinctive. We're now going to turn to some recorded tributes that have come from a diverse group of colleagues, friends that have spanned decades of General Lyles' service in government and industry, including the great rock star impresario, Skunk Baxter, who is actually a hardcore dedicated defense and missile defense advocate and supporter that General Lyles knows very well. General Ed Eberhart, who's likewise the Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force and subsequently the commander of U.S. Space Command and Northern Command. Have former Secretary of the Air Force, Whit Peters, who was there at the time that General Lyles was the Vice Chief. We got Vice Admiral Jim Zortman, who is now the CEO of USAA. We got a young rising star in the business, Mandy Vaughn, who worked very closely and studied at your knee in the National Security Council, or the National Space Council's UAG. And then likewise, we've got Admiral Jim Ellis, the former commander of U.S. STRATCOM, as well as Ellis's predecessor at the National Space Council User Advisory Group. Kind of rounding it out, we have Stuart Brady, the CEO of KBR. And finally, to wrap everything up, General C.Q. Brown, the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So with that, could we have the video roll?
You know, Les, when I was thinking about what I might say to you on this special occasion, it occurred to me that two of the people in my life for whom I have tremendous admiration are both named Lester. Both are innovators, out-of-the-box thinkers, and highly admired in their respective fields. Les Paul had a BMDO coin in his pocket that I gave him over 20 years ago, and you have a Les Paul guitar in your living room that I gave you around the same time. And this is as it should be. Les, it's been an honor and a pleasure to work for you and with you all these many years. Like Les Paul, you have fearlessly traveled a path that very few people have taken, and the results speak for themselves. Les Paul never hesitated to talk with other musicians and offer guidance, ideas, unvarnished, and from the heart. Your efforts and success in mentoring and supporting people on their journeys down a multitude of career paths are genuine and prolific. The headwinds that you both faced just added more lift to your wings. No idea was too far out to be listened to and was always given fair consideration no matter where the political or non-traditional winds were blowing. You both have touched the lives of so many people, some who realized it and some who will never know, but benefited nonetheless. I've seen you be comfortable in any setting, whether it be with the Joint Chiefs of Staff or hanging out with the Blues Brothers. This is a rare talent, my friend. You are a rock star, and I should know. As Colonel John Boyd would say, you can either be somebody or you can do something. You are one of the very few people in this world who have managed to accomplish both. Congratulations on receiving this award, Les. It's a fitting tribute to you, Mina, and the whole family. And to say that it is well-deserved is an understatement at the very least. You take good care, my friend, and I'll see you soon.
Les and Mina, what an honor it is for me to participate in this tribute to Les. And we all know, everyone here knows that you can't pay tribute to Les without paying tribute to Mina. What a team they have been throughout their many years in the Air Force and now in the business community. I reflect back on all the things that we have in common. We're classmates of sorts, both commissioned in 1968. We served at the same time as aides to Major Command commanders. We both served as the Vice Chief, and I find it interesting that I was the Vice Chief in between two of these award winners, but in between you and Tom Morgan, God rest his soul. And then we were both Major Command commanders. So I paid attention, watched you closely, Les, and learned a lot from you. And always amazed how you were able to come up with a solution to the problem. And you were the E.F. Hutton, if you will, at Coronas, sitting around the table. When Les talked, everyone listened. When I look at the Pete Aldridge Lifetime Achievement Award, it looks like it's written for you to capture exactly what you've done over these many years. Prior service and dedication to the community. You certainly have done that. And a lifetime of preserving the National Security Space Initiative. And it certainly has been a lifetime. When you stop and think that it was 1969 when you reported to the Launch Vehicles Office, Project Office. So, and then the other thing that I need to mention that we have in common that's very important is we're both Corvette owners. But I think you've upgraded, so I think I have to do the same to keep up with you. But Les, again, what an honor it's been to serve with you over these many years, to watch you and Mina make everywhere you went better, taking care of people, and something that obviously all of us strive to emulate. So again, congratulations, my friend. I wish I could be there to help you celebrate. All the best.
I first got to know Les Lyles when he was the head of Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, but I didn't really know much about him other than he was a superb expert on things in the space realm. When he started to get close to leaving that post, Mike Ryan, the chief of staff, came to me and said, "Why don't we think about making Les Lyles the vice?" And I had a chance at that point to look back at Les's career to understand more about him and to talk to people about him. What I learned was that he was a consummate leader and in the field, that he had done incredible things and throughout his career. And then I looked at his career closely and realized that 2/3 of his career was actually not in space. About a third had been in jobs related to the F-16. About another 20% had been in research and development. And perhaps most importantly for the Air Force at that time, he had spent a lot of time at Systems Command, including as the requirements head for Systems Command, which was really important because in 1999 was a time when the Air Force was looking to recast itself in the post-Cold War period. At that point, the future was not clear. We had people fighting all over the place, deployed to Northern Watch, Southern Watch, different humanitarian missions. And we were really struggling a bit on the air staff to figure out how we ought to move forward. And so it was really a joy to welcome Les, who had had a career where he had a somewhat panoramic view of the Air Force as the vice. And of course, as the vice, he would be leading the requirements charge for the Air Force and the Joint Staff. So it was great to get him on board. I did not know much about Les other than he had gotten me to hire it was some of his folks to the Air Force, including Roger Teague, who was a spectacular helper. And what I learned when Les got there was that he was not only a spectacular commander, but he was a terrific person to work with in the collaborative and sometimes combative processes inside the Pentagon. I mean, Les has a wonderful style. He is very welcoming. He is very nice. He's a tough guy as well, but he's very, very nice. And he listens to people first because he listens, and then he decides whether he will talk. And when he talks, people listen to him because he is an exceptionally well-qualified engineer. He's an exceptionally well-qualified military officer. And he has an incredible view of the scope of what needs to be done in air and space. So I'm forever grateful, frankly, for Les to work with us for 2 years until he moved off to Materiel Command, because his wisdom really helped the Air Force a lot in moving into what we thought was the future, prior to 9/11. And I've subsequently worked with Les on the Defense Science Board and the Air Force Studies Board, and I am continued to be amazed at how thoughtful he is, how welcoming he is, and how he listens and then comes up with really fabulous ideas. So Les, thank you so much for what you've done for us. It's been a real pleasure to be your friend, your colleague for all these many years. Thank you.
Hi, Les. This is Admiral Jim Zortman, Chairman of the Board at USAA, and I'm delighted that you're receiving this great honor. We at USAA fondly remember your 15 years on the board and your 7 years as the chairman. I was lucky enough to come on the board under your leadership, and I learned so much in the time that we served together about your leadership style, how you took an organization and in your very methodical way made it better, even if it started out as a great organization. So congratulations on what you're being honored for tonight. Every organization that you step into, when you step off of it, is a better place. And I couldn't be more happy to see you honored in this way.
Inspire, prepare, empower. I think that pretty well sums up the impact that I see from General Lyles. First, good afternoon to everyone that's at the NSSA DISC conference, and a huge congratulations to General Lyles for receiving this award. I am fortunate to have served with General Lyles on the National Space Council's Users Advisory Group since 2018. In that capacity, I have watched him change the discourse within the space community, building bridges, getting people, programs, and government agencies to talk and debate the hardest of our problems to solve, to prioritize the efforts that we all need for our economic development, scientific exploration, and national security. And he did so in a manner that I can only summarize by my opening words: inspire, prepare, and empower. He leads with a kindness that we can all only hope to emulate. And he leads with a balance of vision, pushing to achieve the hardest goals we can, but while developing the core of a team that's needed to sustain it. Behind the scenes on the UAG, we made a dent on implementing the vision and policies that we were asked to. And we tried to do this in a way that we think could still be lasting. In short, he is the type of leader that I can only hope to someday be. But perhaps I'll try to not fail at retirement quite so spectacularly. Thank you, General Lyles, for allowing me to support you on the UAG for these years. Thank you for your leadership, mentorship, and most of all, your friendship. And I will look to inspire, prepare, and empower those in the space community in the same manner in your honor. Thank you.
I wish I could be with you in person there today, but it's my great pleasure to add my sincere congratulations to the many others you've already received. As I considered what I might contribute to celebrating this prestigious recognition of my longtime friend and colleague, a single word came to mind. That word, of course, is service. Where I come from, one's not in the Air Force or in the military or even in the armed forces, but rather in the service. It's a term, I suspect, born of earlier generations and now echoed appropriately once again in the phrase, "Thank you for your service," that is today often heard from a grateful public by those privileged to wear the cloth of this nation. For those of us gathered today in celebration, the word has likely been a part of all our lives for as long as we can remember. In that sense, Les Lyles has been in the service for his entire life. On the cusp of the holiday honoring his life, it's good to remember that Dr. Martin Luther King defined service as the rent we pay for the space we occupy. But I wager that Les Lyles would urge all of us gathered here today not to think of service as a cost or a price or a sacrifice, but as a gift that, if freely and honestly given, will be repaid to us many times over. In addition to his extraordinary military career, the list of the boards, panels, studies, societies, councils, groups, and nonprofits to which Les has contributed his precious time and exceptional talent is nearly endless. Despite his extensive academic accomplishments, perhaps he should have taken more high school Latin to understand that pro bono is Latin for free. But in all seriousness, what is most impressive about Les, beyond his remarkable depth and breadth, is the joy that he brings to that service, the encouragement and optimism that he contributes to every organization, and the kindness and compassion that he brings to each member of the team. He simply epitomizes the advice of Dr. Albert Schweitzer, who once said, "I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I do know. The only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve." Les, thank you for that service, and sincere congratulations, my friend, on this award. I know of no one who is more deserving.
Congratulations to General Lester Lyles, Les, or Dude, actually, on receiving this Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Security Space Association. I'm sorry I can't be there with you personally. It is a well-deserved honour, and I'm sure your trophy cabinet is burgeoning at the moment with all the honours that you receive. Your service to your country and your incredible career are an inspiration to so many. And for the past decade, by goodness that's passed quickly, you've been an inspiration to me personally. During your time on the KBR Board of Directors, your intelligence, your integrity, your wisdom and sense of duty have been constant and absolutely vital to our success. As has your humility, which I think is a key attribute in many leaders. Your presence on the board has been truly transformational, and I am so grateful that we've had you on our team. I'm proud that I've had the opportunity to serve alongside you, and I'm super proud to call you my friend. Thank you for what you mean to all of us at KBR, to all the people in the room tonight, and for all you've done for so many. And congratulations once more.
When astronaut John Young completed the maiden flight on the Space Shuttle Columbia, he famously stated, "The dream is alive." It's an honor to help celebrate the decades of achievements of General Lester Lyles, a man who spent his life in service to his nation, who took the time to mentor others and keep their dreams alive. As you heard today, during his time in uniform, Les was an Air Force visionary, pioneering better integration of capability across services, creating bridges between the military and industry, and overseeing the Air Force's most complex projects. He routinely put the most capable technology available into the hands of our warfighters, ensuring our airmen had the very best whenever the nation called. The work he did developing avionics for the F-16 is my personal favorite, and I can say with some experience, nice job, Les. And when he hung up his uniform, his service did not end there. He continued to expand the dreams of our nation, advising and leading our aerospace partners, innovating human spaceflight with NASA and other agencies, and guiding the future of our nation through his work on the President's Intelligence Advisory Board and the National Space Council. I think the only thing Les has ever failed at is retirement. Especially I want to thank Les for continuing to grow the dreams of those around him, mentoring and guiding the next generation to reach their full potential. Through the mentorship you and Mina provided me and Shireen when we returned to Washington, D.C., you helped us keep our dream alive, to serve our nation and support the joint team and their families. Les, tonight we honor you. Thank you for your dedication to progress. Thank you for showing us that service has no limits. Thank you for your vision and your mentorship to myself and countless others. Thank you for keeping our dreams alive.
When you talk to people about their experiences and interactions with General Lyles, what most often comes out are his expansive knowledge, experience, his calm demeanor, his genuineness, sincerity, and selflessness, his interest in people, and his willingness to help anyone, anytime. And I said I would hold a few thoughts here towards the end, and the time is right. And that is the fact that General Lyles' family, Mina, their children, their extended family, and the rest of that, have been his rock, his foundation, his joy, and his pride. They have supported him and likewise taken pride in his accomplishments. Through their sacrifices, they are the ones that actually helped him enable the achievements that we are here to honor today. So you all too deserve a big share in the recognition of this Lifelong Achievement Award, and we thank you for that. We are indebted to you all. Our quick stroll through 50-plus years of General Lyles' selfless service and dedication across innumerable places and important times and challenges is but a small reminder of the enormous depth, diversity, and impact of his life's work. We in the NSS community are proud to claim him as one of our own and wish him all the best in the many years ahead. At this time, I'd like to invite General Lyles, Steve Jakes, Joe Dodd to come forward as they present the prestigious National Security Space Aldridge Award to General Lyles. I'm going to step back here and let it.
Ladies and gentlemen, big reveal. There we go. And it says the Edward C. Pete Aldridge Lifetime Achievement Award 2025 goes to General Lester Dude Lyles.
Les has a few words here, and then we're going to sit down for a little fireside chat.
Okay, I'll keep this very, very short. The obvious. Thank you very much, Steve, Joe, the entire NSSA family, all friends, associates, partners in the audience. I know everybody. I've got to tell my family, about 2 hours ago, this place was packed. The snowstorm has a way of whittling things away, if you will. So you see the hardy ones here, the ones who really either are going to be staying here at the hotel or they don't know what they're doing outside. So let me thank all of you. I feel very, very blessed and very, very humbled. I tell everybody when I heard about this award and heard that I was going to get this honor that I don't think I deserve it. I can look out in the audience there and see a lot of people, Don Hard, Jeff Harris, Steve Jakes himself, Roger Teague, so many others out there who are friends and compatriots and people who've supported me. In some cases, I've supported them. I like Chirag Parikh's comments yesterday at the Future Leaders session. He talked about mentorship, and he pointed out how mentors don't have to be somebody who's above you. Mentors can be those who are at your same level or sometimes the people that work for you. And so I've been mentored by so many of the people in this audience and so many of the people who are literally part of the families of those that participate in those videos. So I feel very blessed, very humbled, very honored, and just wonderful. My family, of course, is here. I told my wife, once she told me, make it short. She always tells me that. So I told her I wouldn't say anything mushy, but I tell people this all the time. I said it at my retirement ceremony at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the Air Force Museum in 2003. My wife is not the wind beneath my wing. Sometimes she's the wing itself, the engine, the fuselage, the pilot, the co-pilot. She literally does everything to guide me and our wonderful family. Renee, our oldest daughter, Philip, my son, Mary Ellen, my daughter-in-law, my granddaughter couldn't be here, Michaela, no, my grandson, Justin, Lauren, one of twins, her twin sister, who's a doctor, is busy delivering babies today, I think, so she's not here, but I've been blessed to have a wonderful family, and personally, and probably even more blessed compared to most military people. Every one of my family members literally are within 20 minutes of where Mina and I live. So we do so many things almost every day together, talk to each other every day, go places and do things, family vacations. That in itself is a blessing because family is the most important thing. And I've been blessed with great friends and associates. Major General Roger Teague and his lovely wife Kim are amongst those. And again, I've just been very, very blessed. So Steve, Joe, NSSA family, thank you very, very much. God bless you.
I'll give a little thing.
Okay.
Well, now for the fun part. As I sat and reflected a little bit about not just the number of years, but the span of history that General Lyles has served in government. I mean, there are those of us in the room that remember that was kind of, it began at the height of the turmoil of the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement and the rest of that as we progressed through Vietnam and the height of the Cold War and the rest of that. You've had a pretty broad sweep of experience. So I'm going to maybe just pose a few questions, get your kind of reaction to it all. And I think you know maybe a little bit about what's coming, but I think people are going to be really interested over that span to kind of understand what some of the biggest changes are that you witnessed across your Air Force career. What were some of the moments and experiences that just stood out to you the most? And I think probably as important as any, what were the things that you were most proud of during your career?
Well, thank you, Mike. And first, thank you for your agreeing to host this event and to be the MC. You've done a fantastic job. I probably don't deserve it, but thank you very, very much.
My honor.
You know, when I think about my Air Force career, and particularly related to space, it actually goes beyond the start of my going to Air Force Space and Missile Systems Organization, Space Systems Division. As I was talking to Don Hart earlier today, it's had several names over the years, but now SSC, Space Systems Command. My space involvement actually started when I was in grad school. As was mentioned, I'm a native of Washington, D.C., born and raised here in D.C., By the way, it came with my birth certificate that I'm a diehard Redskins/Commanders fan. It also said, I hate the Eagles, but now they won, so I got to be nice about that. So,
what about the Cowboys?
Oh, I really hate the Cowboys. Everybody hates the Cowboys. They hit a hand back there, okay. It started with ROTC at Howard University. I turned down an appointment to the Air Force Academy, went to stay locally here, went to Howard University. In ROTC, as an engineering major, I planned to spend, after I graduated and got my commission, I was going to spend 4 years as an engineer in the Air Force, and lo and behold, that ended up being 36 years as an engineer and program manager in the Air Force. But my first real assignment after I got my commission was right to grad school, New Mexico State University. There's at least one person I talked to earlier today who's a New Mexico State grad here, and we both know that we are the other Aggies, the New Mexico State Aggies, if you will. And my master's degree thesis was a feasibility study of nuclear propulsion rockets. So even before I got the assignment out to Los Angeles, I was studying and did a thesis study on rocketry. And wouldn't you know, probably related to the panel that you had earlier today about technology and the time it takes to develop things, we are just now getting to the point in the United States where we're looking at nuclear propulsion rockets. And I'm going to go back and look at my thesis to see if I can give it to somebody or sell it, if you will. It might be worth something by now. But so I've been blessed to see so many different things. And I think probably the biggest thing for me has been technology. The maturation of technology, how much technology has grown and how much technology means to the Air Force. All of us, particularly Air Force officers, are always bragging to people, and particularly in the other service, about we're the high-tech service, and we really are. But technology, I think, is something everybody realizes is so critically important to everything we do, and particularly in national security. So having the opportunity to be involved in technology for 36 years in the Air Force, and then now, it's hard to believe, some 23 years since I retired, 22 years since I retired, technology involvement. I'm a member of the National Academy of Engineers, and the growth of technology to me is what's been the major, most important thing.
Yeah, interesting. Well, as I noted in my remarks, this was actually a privilege to kind of review your history, talk to other people about filling in gaps, had no idea about. And as I pointed out here, that I still can't believe that you spent 4 years working for Al Slay. And how you survived that, I'm not quite sure. So that did provoke then the idea of, well, what kind of are the hardest jobs and experience you had? Because that may be just the beginning, but that wasn't the end of really hard jobs. And I guess the big question is, what'd you take away from some of those?
Well, General Al Slay, and I dare say probably there are not more than a handful of people here in the audience who actually even remember General Slay, but he was a powerful four-star in charge of research development, the logistics, to some extent in the Air Force. He's the father of the F-16 in many respects, obviously developed by General Dynamics, but he was a proponent in the Air Staff, in the Pentagon, and certainly with Congress. He was a very hard guy to work for. He was a pilot's pilot. I told Don Hart that I, as his aide-de-camp, when he brought me on as his aide at Air Force Systems Command, I had a letter from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Lou Allen, to all the other four-stars and anybody else who would need it. That letter said that General Al Slay is the best pilot we have in the Air Force and the best pilot in the country. He can fly anything he wants. And so he used that to fly any airplane that he had an interest in. And probably one of the toughest things I did for him, and by the way, I got fired several times by him. He always hired me back, thanks to his lovely wife.
You couldn't get away that easily.
He fired me several times, and one of the times was in France, where I had set up for him to fly in a Harrier of the French Air Force. And General Slay was absolutely livid, and he blamed me, and of course, as the age, you get all the blame. He blamed me because the French, a Harrier pilot, they automatically put him in the back seat. He had never been in the back seat of anything. He was totally insulted that he got a chance to fly it, but to be in the back seat. And so he considered himself the best of the best when it comes to flying, but also when it came to acquisition and research and development. And so that was a very, very tough environment. I think there are other times that he fired me I won't go into, if you will, but I think probably one of the hardest things I did was working in missile defense and being in charge of Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, now MDA, Missile Development Agency. And I'll never forget, I was in charge of BMDO/MDA at a time when we had division in the executive branch. We had a Democratic president, Bill Clinton, and we had a Republican Senate and House. And the Republicans were very, very, very pro-missile defense. Now, that was great for me as the leader of the organization. I can't tell you how much money I got from Congress, literally just poured into our coffers because they were supportive of missile defense. And it was a challenge trying to balance that with what the leadership, the president, wanted in some cases. So that made it tough. But probably the toughest challenge I had one time, I was asked to come testify to Congress on almost a weekly basis, in all honesty. I mean, that's literally the truth, because of the importance of missile defense. There was a leader of the House Armed Services Committee who was a very, very strong proponent for missile defense. I won't mention his name. He's no longer in Congress, but out of respect for him, I won't mention his name. But somehow he got the impression that at one of these hearings that I was going to help him embarrass the president by telling him and his committee in the Congress that I wasn't getting the money that I needed for missile defense from the president. He had me at a hearing. I was the only one testifying, and he asked a question about that, but it turns out that was not the truth. I was getting as much money as I needed, and particularly he wanted to devote money to a program that had some technical challenges, the THAAD program, Theater High Altitude Area Defense Program. He wanted to pour some more money in that, and so when he asked me about that money, I told him, Congressman, I can't use that money right now. We're still trying to solve the technical issues. And if you give me money now for THAAD, that would be like throwing good money after bad. That was probably not the right thing to say because he interpreted that as my saying that all the money he was giving me was a waste, if you will. That was not what I was intending. So he literally stopped the hearing, came down from his leadership post for this hearing, came to me sitting at the table as the only witness, put his finger in my chest and said, I can't trust you. He thought from his staff that I was going to say something embarrassing to the president, but that was not the truth. I go back to a comment made by Admiral Studeman this afternoon, for those of you who heard that, and he talked about ethics and integrity. The integrity thing for me to say was the truth. I didn't need the money at that particular time. And so that's what I said. I'm used to, particularly in that kind of setting, to telling the truth. And so it was an embarrassing moment. He, he was livid, this congressman, that I didn't support him in helping him to embarrass the president. I was very worried because he was in a powerful position, very powerful, as the chair of the House Armed Services Committee. And so when I left that night, it just so happened I had a meeting, a Corona conference that was talked about earlier, of all the Air Force 4-stars and some of the 3-stars out at the Air Force Academy out at Colorado Springs. The next morning, I flew out to Colorado Springs, and when my plane landed at Peterson Air Force Base, and as I was getting off, somebody came up to me and said, sir, the Secretary of Defense would like to speak to you. And I knew I was fired because I had embarrassed a congressman. I forgot to mention one thing. When the congressman said that to me about not trusting me, my immediate response was, Congressman, if you can't trust those of us in uniform, who can you trust? And then he was even more livid. He just walked off there. So I knew when I landed at Peterson and somebody told me that the Secretary of Defense wanted to speak to me, that I had been fired. I got to the phone in base ops, and Bill Cohen, the Secretary of Defense, a Republican former senator from Maine, was the Secretary of Defense. When I got on the phone, Secretary Cohen said, Les, don't you worry about that congressman and what he said. My friends and I will take care of him. He should never have done that, particularly to somebody who has been leading an organization so very, very well. When I got out to the Air Force Academy, I don't know how people found out about that, but all the 4-stars in the Air Force who were at that meeting came up to me, congratulated me. I remember something that Tom Moorman had told me a couple of weeks before. I saw him in the Pentagon. They had just promoted Ed Eberhart to be the new vice chief. Tom Morgan came up to me, ran into me in the Pentagon. He said, Les, I want you to know that the Air Force wants to promote you to a 4-star, but we're not quite sure of the timing because you're too nice. And every 4-star thinks you're too nice. Somehow my rejoinder with that congressman did away with the nice thing. And so
that ups your stock.
A few weeks later, I became a 4-star. So
That's great.
So that was probably my toughest job, running missile defense.
So I know we don't have an unlimited amount of time, but your comments here provoked a little bit, and you probably are uniquely capable of maybe offering some thoughts. One of the things, casualties, as I've mentioned a couple times, with the collapse of the Soviet Union and all the contraction within the Air Force was a lot of organizational consolidation. And one of those was the demise of Air Force Systems Command. And you brought up a little bit about how the strength of having a Systems Command commander at the table with Corona, Tom Marsh, Larry Scantz, whatever else. I'm kind of curious, where is your thoughts today relative to the importance of having a strong voice, uniform voice, in advocating for development and acquisition, as opposed to it just being sort of a support function?
Great question, Mike, and I think it's absolutely completely important. It's very, very, you can't really tell people the value of having a 4-star sitting around the table with the other 4-stars, supporting the men and women who are in acquisition and supporting all the programs. The warfighters are the key, obviously, and they're going to have their demands, but supporting those who are the supporters, if you will, the developers, the technologists, et cetera, that's something you can't get without having somebody who knows the job, knows the activity, knows the people, and can speak up and talk for their and on their behalf with all the other 4-stars. I will, again, not mention names. I had a clash with a acquisition secretary at one particular time because, and I'm going to give myself away here, because she thought she should be the one sitting around that table and she should be the one who wrote the tickets for those who are going to be nominated for the colonel or for the next 4-star. I had battles with her that regardless of what your position is, having somebody who's equal to the other 4-stars is critically important. So I think that this young lady was fantastic in her job, obviously at the time, and very important, but it was really critical to have somebody who could really speak for the programs, speak for the technologies, and more importantly, speak for the men and women who are part of the research and development activity.
Well, if I can maybe add, from my perspective, having grown up a number of years behind you, it was so important to have stability, continuity in uniformed leadership, who it is that you aspire to be at some point in the future, that a lot of that has eroded over time because of just how we've revised some of that. So gratuitous comment, but nonetheless. One of the things that I think also is very interesting about your path, particularly after time in uniform, not only the various jobs, but the fact that you really expanded your worldview, if you will, about space. Deeply immersed on the civil space side of things. Likewise, had involved through PIFIAB and what goes on in the intelligence world and the rest of that. Particularly for this audience and the purpose of NSSA is to try to understand as the role of space really rises up in terms of our national security in the 21st century. I'm kind of curious, what is it that you might take as, here are the things to really focus on. How do we create more unity of effort and if you will, national will to do the things that are going to be so important to our nation's defense and security in the decades ahead?
Another great question, Mike, and there's multi-dimensions to that. I'll mention just two. One is the partnership between those who are involved in the space enterprise. One of the roles of the National Space Council, which is led by, or has historically been led by, the Vice President of the United States. I was in Trump 1 National Space Council Advisory Group, and then in the most recent National Space Council Advisory Group under the Biden administration. It is so critical to make sure that all the space enterprise are talking as one in some respects, and they're talking to each other. As an engineer, quickly to remind people that I don't care whether you're doing intelligence, whether you're doing commercial, whether you're doing national security, whether you're looking at what's happening with climate control, whether you're looking at what's happening in agriculture, or whether you're looking at some critical issue in Iran or Russia or China, the physics are the same. And bringing those things together, recognizing that the target might be different, but the technology and resources needed to bring those things together to look at those things, they're the same. So it's critically important that we work together and we talk to each other and communicate with each other. I was glad to see Stacey Williams earlier talking about one of her promises and things to do is to try to make sure she's bringing together other agencies and what they're doing. It's amazing what's going on in other agencies in their space environment. She mentioned Department of Commerce, gracious, Department of Energy, Department of Interior, everybody has some bit of space activity. And if we don't try to bring them together, the risk we have is that we're going to not leverage not just the technology, but the resources. Resources are scarce for everybody, and if we can bring everybody's dollars together to try to address things and find the common needs, whether that be technology or some sort of operation, we're not going to be as successful as we need to be. So I think that's one area that's very, very critical.
Well, and if I might on that, I think that just you naming those different departments and their responsibilities, the other side of this is that our national security is not just what happens away. It also what happens to the safety, well-being, and the confidence the American public has. So yes. What's happening with our critical infrastructure and how space plays into that, it's now it's grown enormously, and it's almost an unholy act to try to get all these departments together to understand that they've all got to be working towards some common goods to protect our nation's security and
You're
defense.
Right. One part of that common good for everybody is to leverage and inform their constituents.
Yes.
Not just in the Congress, if you will. Their constituents for each one of the different agencies, whether it's Commerce, Interior, Department of Defense, Department of Energy. It's amazing to me still. One of the things I was going to mention earlier was the interfaces I've had with Pete Aldridge. I think the last interface was in 2004 when President Bush established the President's Space Commission and looking at what the space strategy should be for the United States. Pete Aldridge was named by the President to chair that. Pete had some very high luminaries to be part of that, but he also asked me to serve on that Space Commission. And part of what we did is we went around the country talking to different people in different communities was to try to see what do people think about space. I was blown away, particularly out west. We were in San Francisco at a large auditorium, and we allowed the public to ask us questions. We had one man, rather senior, who said, I have my radio that gets me Sirius or something like that. He said, what do I need space for? Space doesn't do anything for me. It was amazing to me how still today, how few people in this great country of ours of 300 some million people do not know how much space contributes to everything in our lives, from banking to national security, obviously everything. And so part of what I think needs to be brought together is to tell people, tell your constituents so they can be the advocates for space programs, not just a congressman, not just a senator, but the people need to be the advocates because they're the ones who get the value from it.
So I've got a little bit of time here left. Let me just ask you, although it's been noted a number of times that you have failed spectacularly in your retirement. So we know that not every waking hour of yours is out there doing pro bono work and other things. So what do you do to have fun? And you mentioned you've got time with the family, but so what gets you excited outside of work?
Well, there are lots of things. The family comes number one, and particularly in how blessed I am to have family so close by. On any given day, I was at the military order to Carabao on the that you now chair for this next year and the last year or so, last Saturday. But my family were all together at dinner for our twins, Leslie and Lauren. So they were all together, and then we can do that in the spur of the moment. The night before, we were with my daughters and with my wife. We were at the Kennedy Center for a musical. Sunday afternoon, I was with my daughters, with Renee and and Lauren, and we were seeing one of the many movies that's been nominated for an Academy Award. The girls started something that every year when the Academy Award nominations come out, they go to every movie, literally foreign, animated, go to every movies to look at them. Mina and I don't get a chance, that we don't have they invite us, but we don't go to every movie. But they go to every movies, and then as a family on Academy Awards night, we vote for who we think is going to win, and whoever wins the most has a little Oscar that they put together that we win, and there's money that's shared to be part of that. And so family comes to number one. Yeah. Number two, I'm a car guy. I love cars, and when weather permitting, around here on any given Saturday, weather permitting, I'm at Cars and Coffee at Great Falls Village, and I love seeing some of those $1 million Bugattis and Ferraris and Porsches, et cetera. My modest C7 previously and now C8 Corvette. I'm waiting since October. I've ordered my E-Ray, the Corvette C8 with a electric motor on the front axle, so it's all-wheel drive. I've ordered it. I've been waiting since October, so I'm a car guy. I love cars.
Okay, we won't get into how many tickets.
You know, I've never gotten a ticket. Never got a ticket.
Holy
Which tells
moly.
people that I don't take advantage of those 600 horsepower that I have. That's what.
So one of the things when we chatted in advance of this, you said one of the things memorable was the decision that you made to retire in 2003 and when you did that. You feel okay about sharing that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll share it. I'll make it the last thing because it's my family's heard it before. Some of you out there have probably heard this story, but we roughly, for particularly 3 stars and 4 stars, technically we at one point we could go to 40 years. That's what Rumsfeld wanted. He wanted us to have a 40-year retirement. Yeah. Not only that, he would have done it, by the way, till somebody reminded him, Don, these guys are not billionaires like you. They need to get out and make some money for their family. So he kept it at 35. And that's, I got to 35. I still wasn't ready to retire. But come Martin Luther King Day in the year 2003, my son Philip took my grandson Justin to a Martin Luther King celebration downtown here in D.C. And he happened to mention to my grandson Justin that said, I don't know if you knew this, but your grandfather, my father was here when Martin Luther King had his Freedom March in 2003. He was actually here. Now, my grandson found that hard to believe, and some of you probably looking at me don't think it's hard to believe, but in 2003, I was a 17-year-old freshman at Howard University. My neighborhood, a couple of guys, and my brother and I all came down, and we were here for the Martin Luther King's March of Freedom. Now, I'll tell you, I was not a social activist or anything. This is literally the truth, and Mina's heard this, and so I can say it. The only reason I was downtown, and the only reason my friends were downtown was because we knew there'd be girls there. And so we were there because of the girls, but I quickly got caught up in what was going on, seeing people marching down Constitution Avenue of all hue, males, females, different locations all around the country, all around the world. And when Martin Luther King started speaking later, I was standing under a tree. I know where that tree is today, and I can tell you where it is, standing under a tree. And when he started talking about, I have a dream, that's when it hit me that this was an historical event. And so that's why I was there. Now, you add up my time in the service and when that was in 2003, you quickly realize that I'm 78 now, I'll be 79 in April. So blessed to have been there, blessed to have had the opportunity to even talk about that. When my grandson heard that I was there, I was up at Wright Pat as a commander at Air Force Material Command. He wanted to call me to speak to me about that. So he did call me that evening, and he said, Grandpa, we were downtown for a Martin Luther King celebration, and we've been studying about Martin Luther King in school, and I was so happy and proud to hear that you were there when Martin Luther King had his march in 2003. And I was so proud that my then 5-year-old grandson remembered that. And then in the next breath, he said, now, Grandpa, we've also been studying about Ben Franklin. Were you there when Ben Franklin flew his kite? And so after telling him, no, I wasn't there, I realized that when your grandkids think you're from the colonial days, it's time to retire. And so the next day I put my papers in, and that's how.
Okay.
So I'll stop right there.
We probably pumped you enough here for the afternoon, but it's been a real privilege for me to be able to spend a little bit of time here and to kind of open up for the whole crowd here. So please join me in thanking and congratulating General Lyles.
Thanks. Bye.
That's great.